Okay, so that's the chassis rails all prepped, ready to glue together. So obviously we've got both sides here. Now the way the laser works, it will put an ever so slight chamfer on the cut. So what we're actually going to want to do is identify which side that chamfer's on. So on these ones, the chamfer is sloping ever so slightly this way. So what we're going to want to do then is find the matching side piece with the chamfer travelling the other way. And we're going to want to glue those two together. This only really matters on the back-to-back parts where you're making up a piece of box section really, because what you want them to be doing is looking like that rather than looking like that. Like that, they're going to pull paint in the middle, they're never going to look quite right. You're not going to be able to blend that line away. When they're sat like this, they'll join together nicer. A quick sand and that joint will near enough disappear. So yeah, that is step number 2. So start the build by gluing the chassis rails. Glue parts 6 to 8, aligning them at the front, and with the angle drop down that will become the rim mount. So obviously these are going back to back, but they're not necessarily joining together logically. So what that instruction there means is we're looking at the ram mount here, and we're going to align based on those two. It also aligns flush at the front. A lot of the silage trailer chassis won't do that. They'll actually be stepped like that at the front. So just keep an eye on what the manual says. Have a good look at the photos before you actually commit to gluing anything. So we'll lay those two parts down, get the glue, lid off. It may just need a minute for the glue to travel down to the bottom of the tube to pull out any air. And all we're going to do, we've had a look at the two parts. This part is smaller, it's got less surface area in contact with the other part, so we're going to apply the glue to the smaller part. We're just going to run it along, nice dab of glue, not putting loads on, only a little amount. What the technique that I'm using there is I'm actually holding it flat against the part, squeezing the bottle very lightly and just running it up and down to get a nice thin layer on. You don't want massive dollops of glue on it. They're going to squeeze out the side, hard to work with. That's when you start sticking your fingers together. So we've got our two parts there. Line that one up on the floor. Not on the floor, on the table. And then just gently, so a couple of millimeters above, and I can start to eye up now where it's going to go. And I'm just going to drop it down. So it's in contact now. And then I'm going to apply some pressure to the front end, and that will help the glue go off. And then I'm going to travel quickly down the body, making sure that the whole part is lined up. I apologise, I can't really show that on the camera very well. So I can just see that I'm out of line at the top here. So quickly before the glue sets, I'm going to push it on the flat surface just to get everything back and in line. Lovely stuff. So that's set instantly now. That is one part. If I was very quick, I would be able to get in now with the craft knife and actually peel the two apart. Another 30 seconds and that part will snap if I try and do that really. So again, that's where taking your time, pre-planning, have a dry fit. You know, I've got these two parts with no glue on. Just eye it up, see how well you can get it to go on, because you might notice that something's slightly out of line or something needs altering slightly. Yeah, so I'll show that again now. So we've got the smaller part, that's where the glue is going on. Just nice and easy, nice and gentle with the glue. We don't need loads, you just want it over everywhere but in a nice thin layer. All dropped on there, flip it over, align your parts just, you can see that I can actually hold those parts there just above each other to make sure that they are going to fall in line before I commit to pushing it down, and then I know I've only got a couple of seconds now to get everything in line. I'm using the square edge of the craft board there to make sure that my two rails are sat together nicely. Squeezing it, pushing any air out of that joint, and that will also push that glue around so that the whole area is glued nice and strong. This is also going to help with any warping, so this is where the kits sort of excel against any 3D printed parts and stuff. This material started life as a sheet. It wants to be a sheet of material. It didn't start life as a liquid or as a reel of plastic. And then what we've done there is we've glued back to back 2 parts. We've made a laminate the same as plywood and stuff like that. That part is now very strong. It's still brittle, unfortunately, because of the style of material, but you can see we've got a bit of flex in there. But what that's not going to do over time is warp, so bend outwards, bend inwards, bend all over the place. What you'll find with a lot of 3D print stuff is that it will either sag in that direction or it will go all wibbly wobbly down here. Not such a big thing on chassis rails because it's so boxy, but when we start to get towards the sides, that's where you'll see a real difference then over time. But yeah, so we're ready to move on to the next step now. So scrolling through the manual, the next step is actually going to be putting the cross members in. So on this kit, it'll be important looking at it to take note of the numbers. So we've got an 18, a 10, an 11, and 3 9s are going to make up that chassis rail, which means that there's 4 different cross members to fit. So we don't want to lose track of what's what. I am going to pop them all out now, more for the sake of the video and making it a bit more seamless than anything, but we'll be able to, I'll line them all up nicely and we'll be able to keep track of what's what. If you're not confident in that, just pop them out one by one and glue them in place as you go along. Okay, just while I'm working through the cross members here, a little tip, trick. So if you're wanting to make life a bit easier, or if you've got the tools already around, you can see, for example, in this part here, it's tiny and it's got slots in, so something's going to glue into those slots. So we want to rough up inside of them just to make them strong. I'm pointing this one out particularly because I know it's a ram mount that is going to go in there, so that is going to hold up the tipping ram, and when you push down on the body, all the force is going to go into that joint, so we want that joint to be nice and strong. You could get in there with sandpaper if you needed to, so you could actually rip yourself off a little piece, fold it in half so that you've got sandpaper right down the edge, and come in like that. A little bit fiddly and it won't give the best finish. So all I've got there is a diamond file. You can pick them up for a couple of quid in a pack. They come in that little sleeve of so many of them, and then you'd even have the right nice square edge one. I am not an organised person, and this is the only one I could find at quick notice. This is the half round one, but we're just going to use the flat edge of it, go in like a violin almost, and just rough up those side edges there, rough up the bottom, and it is just taking that glossy finish away. This will give us a much stronger glue joint. While we're at it, we'll do the sides there, just quickly get into those edges, and all this is doing is making a stronger model out of the end of it. So this will be more durable. You can take it round to your shows, on your diorama, tip it up, tip it down to your heart's content. While they're not toys, they won't stand up to play, but they're fairly, as far as scratch build stuff goes, they're pretty rigid and they're pretty strong. So yeah, I will finish sanding these parts up and then we'll get into assembly. So that's all the parts are now ready to put together in step 3. So I've just lined them up there exactly as in the manual, 18, 10, 11, 9, 9, 9. So all we're going to do is keep them nice and square while we're building it. Tip or a trick for that, find yourself a square edge, then we can line them all up, and that'll be... I'm not going to use the word easy, but yeah, that will be simpler. So I'm going to start at the back with the number 9s that are all the same, just gluing it on an edge, inside there, and on the 2 side parts. So just anywhere that's going to interact, so you can have a quick dry fit, see where it's going to interact, and work from there. So I'm going to drop that one into place, just like that, and then lay it on its side, and using that edge of the sprue as a square, I can line it all up, push it, and just hold it for a second or two. Let that glue set a little bit. We'll fill this space somehow. I'll keep talking at you. Might come up with something interesting. So you might note as well, so when I've put that part in, I've felt that maybe the edge isn't touching quite enough, so you can go back and sand it off, so that you've got as much contact as possible. But you can see that glue is now already holding that in place. Just minor adjustments to keep it nice and square. And we're going to go along the whole line. Just take care, because you will knock it out of place if you're not careful. Whilst the glue is holding it, it's not fully set. So just repeating that process now with the other parts. So yeah, the key here is to just not rush, take your time. It's going nowhere. It's most likely that you're doing this on like a winter's evening or something. There's absolutely no time pressures for you to get this finished. It's much better if you're finding yourself getting frustrated or anything like that. You'll be much better off putting it back in the box, go and find something else to do, come back to it when you're feeling ready again, because the more wound up you get at it, the less likely you're going to be to want to pick it back up. So on the edge here, I've realised I've put one in not the wrong place, but I should have put this end one in first, so I can't really square up on that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use a cutting board to my advantage. I'm going to line up the edge with one of the straight lines here, and then I can actually line up the other edge with the perpendicular line on the board. Hold that into place for a second, let it set, and then move onwards. So just double checking now on the instruction manual as to what side up this is, so I can see on the photo there that these slots are going to be at the bottom of the chassis, so they're going to go in that way up. So I've just double checked that it'll fit before I put glue anywhere near it. Flip that chassis back up, glue that joint again. So again, this is on the same sort of slot as those part 9s. Drop it into place. And again, I can take this, because this is in the air now, there's no point me trying to rest it on the board, but I can still take the sprue and just double check that we are sitting square. Perfect. Then we've got a much smaller part, so it's going to be quite difficult to get that to want to sit. So I'm going to glue that in, hopefully in roughly the right place, and because it's so small, when we come to join the two parts together, we're going to have a bit of adjustment available to us. So I'm not sweating if this doesn't go 100% where I want it at the time. And in fact, you could probably actually leave this one out. When you look at how it's built up, you could leave this one out and drop it in afterwards, which we might well end up doing yet. Final one, that little narrow end cap. Not really sure why I've built this one like this. I think something maybe hides it at the front. But anyway, on most of them, this will be dropping into a notch in the front. On here, we're just gluing dead to the side, not to the end. So sometimes the parts will be sitting like that, but we can see this is narrow. It's the same width as the slotted parts on these, so it's going to sit on that end piece. We can also actually see that in the instruction manual picture. So we're going to stick it on like that, just taking that edge again to make sure it's all nice and square, that the top and the bottom line up. Lovely stuff. So that is all 6 cross members in place, all sitting square. So what we're going to do now, we're going to drop a little bit of glue onto each of them, and then we're going to mate it up to the other side of the chassis. Again, you don't want to go mad on the glue. I am putting a bit more in the way of a dollop on here than I am when we're gluing 2 parts back to back, just to, the glue then fills out any of the air gaps. And I don't actually know if it increases the strength of the joint scientifically, but it just feels like it's the right thing to do. A lot of the trailers that I've now built, they've travelled a few thousand miles with me to and from shows, and most joints don't fail. Normally I've left something sitting on a box and it cracks the actual part. So yeah, what we're going to do now is align those two parts up. So looking at the way that they're all going to come together, I'm actually going to do it on the flat to keep it nice and stable. I'm going to bring that part in, aligning all the different slots. And yeah, as we predicted, that part 10 is just causing us a little bit of issue. But there we go, so that's all of them in. And because part 10 sticks up, I'm just going to grab one of the excess pieces, lay it on so that part 10 is now up in the air, but I still have a fully flat surface to work from. And I can now make sure that everything is sat square and flush and straight. So when you're building up a chassis, you really do want everything to be running straight. Because you're going to notice if the chassis sits wonky to the body, you're going to notice it pulling on the joints, your hinges aren't going to line up properly. So it is critical that you get this sitting nice and square, both that they're running in line together, but that these joints are 90 degrees to each other, so you don't want the whole chassis to be rhombus shaped or out of line. So yeah, there we go. That is the basic chassis together. What I think I will do now is push on through the build, following the instruction manual, and whenever I come across something I can give you a hint or a tip on, I will drop in now with another video. I should have read a little bit further on in the manual, because literally the next step we've got another tip. So we put in ram mounts on now, and they're not very big. So I've got quite small hands and nails that overhang the end of my finger, so I find it quite easy to manipulate small parts. If you've got your big burly farmer hands, this is what's going to have put you off in the first place, I guess, is trying to work with such small pieces. So another tool to add to the arsenal if you want to, a set of tweezers. Don't nick your partner, wife, mum's best pair. Go and buy yourself a set, they're only a couple of quid in the supermarket. You do want, however, a good pair of like plucking tweezers. I think these are what you'd use on your eyebrows. They just hold a lot better than modelling tweezers. Cheap modelling tweezers really don't have a lot of grip in them. These are nicely sprung with that sharp edge to them. And all we're going to use them for is we're going to hold on to the end of it, like that. And that suddenly that part is now much bigger, much easier to work with. I can very easily come in with the glue, drop that glue on there, find the part slot, and easy as that, I can even do that while I'm watching the screen rather than watching the part. There you go. And on parts like this, you can see those holes are all going to have to line up. We're going to run a bar, we're going to run a piece of the metal rod through those holes to hold the ram on. So we want every one of those holes to be in line. So just bring it up by eye until all of them are, there you go, you can see through the whole lot. And we're going to repeat that for the other ram mount there. Again, this is where the tweezers come in handy. We've got quite a close together slot to get into there. So if I try to come in there with my fingers, I'm going to knock that other part out of the way. Whereas with a set of tweezers, I don't have to wait for that to all glue and set fully. I can just come in, drop it into place, manipulate it where I want it, and hold it in place while that glue sets. Just double checking again that everything is in line. And as you can see, as we come into place, there you go. So yeah, any small parts like that, even some of the bigger parts, you might find it easier to work with a set of tweezers. Okay, so that's the chassis now built up. That's following the manual up to step 7. So nothing new on the rest of those parts, just keeping everything square, keeping it all straight, making sure you sand those parts to get a nice glued joint. So we're going to move on to the body now. So that's got a new process in it. So we're going to start using these thin plastic sheets. So this is 0.5mm plastic card, and it's what we use for basically anything thin. It doesn't laser cut as well, hence why the kits themselves aren't made out of it. We have to do a lot of prep work to be able to laser it, so it's only when you get into a complex shape like that we're going to laser it. These are all cut by hand, just with a craft knife. So there's a little bit of variation, and you'll see what that leads to as we go through this step. So we'll start by gluing the floor sheet in. As you can see, there's a lot of bearers in the floor. We don't particularly need to glue every single one of these down. The glue will have dried at one end by the time you've got to the other. So we're probably just going to glue every third bearer. And we'll start with the bearers in the middle and then run a thin line down the edges. Basically, the more critical the place to glue, the later in laying the glue we want to make sure that none of it has gone off. Just quickly, 3 sheets, you can see got 2 that are the same width and 1 is a little bit wider. That means that this has to be the floor sheet. Just double check before that it does fit on. Yeah, so we've got plenty of room around the outsides. We're going to trim that excess off. But let's get it glued on first. Again, just give it a quick key in with the sandpaper. Nothing major on these ones. This is much more about paint finish than it is about gluing the joint stronger. That glossy side of the plastic card, that's really going to not want to take paint if we don't key into it like we are doing here. If you're after a really good paint finish, you don't want to be using 240 grit to do this. You want a thinner grit, something like 800 or 1200. But I'm not a painter. I'm never going to be able to get that paint finish on to that good. Apologies, that is me wiping the excess off on my jumper. You could get a tap cloth, you could get just a dishcloth or something like that to do that job. You just don't want all the dust from the sanding sat on there when you're gluing, because you're going to glue to dust, not to the piece. But yeah, so quickly starting out somewhere around the middle, just dropping very quick, working through it, but making sure that you are getting glue on there and material on there. I've gone for every 2 bearers here actually. So we're going to pay a bit more attention now as we come down the side, making sure that we are getting all along that side piece. Same on the far side. And then you're going to come back and do that middle bearer where we've got the ram mount position in it. I'm going to get that nicely covered, and then the same at the back. This is where the trailer will actually pivot on. So again, we want that nice and strong, all glued up, dead quick. Line it up. What I'm going to do to save a little bit of time is I'm going to line it up with one of the edges of the cut, leaving a lot of excess on one side. It may be more comfortable for you to literally just drop it down in the middle. So just giving it a nice press down, making sure that that glue is able to spread out throughout the joint, like really. As I push down on that, you can imagine I'm compressing that gap, and that glue is going to squeeze outwards. And that just gives us a better, stronger joint. And there you go. So that's it glued on. You can see I've worked to the edge of the plastic here, and I've left plenty of overlap on this side. So then that's where our craft knife now comes in. So what I am not trying to do here is dig in and pull through that plastic. It's not going to work. What that's going to do is it's going to send the knife all over the place. It's going to crash us into the side. It's going to send us away from it. And we're just going to end up with a really nasty cut. All I'm going to do is lay it on, weight of the knife, and then just a tiny little push from the finger down. Repeat that 2-3 times. And what you'll actually now be able to do is simply crack down that sheet all the way along to cut through that joint. So now if we pop it back, there you go, peeled away. What you could do, you can keep going. Again, you're not pressing hard, just keep that run going and it will cut all the way through. So I'll show you that technique on this side here. So you're just gonna, I'm not really applying any pressure at all here, and there you go. Cut through, really nice and neat. So I'm just gonna quickly make sure that we have nothing left, and then give it a quick sand on those edges so that they sit flush. So the sides of the body are going to sit up against there. So we certainly don't want the thin sheet to stick out past the thick sheet. Ideally we want it all as one, as much surface area to glue to as possible. So just a quick sand, and then the same on the front and the back as well. Lovely stuff. So that is the floor sheet ready to go. Floor on all of the trailers really I think is the same. It is just one piece and you're gluing that to it because the trailers all build up around it. It's nice, it's square, it's simple. Moving on to the sides. So the Bailey is fairly unique I think in the trailers we offer. The Marshall's the same, but all your Irish trailers and stuff are double-sided. So I will be back in a second actually. And we're still editing away and it's still going to be too long, so I'm going to again cut here. We'll come back, there'll be another video if you follow it there, and that should take us to the end of the build then. Thank you.